Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robby Burns. This week's guest is trombone YouTube star, Christopher Bill. Are you on a Mac?
I'm a PC guy. Don't tell anybody.
You're a PC guy. No, it's good. I feel like that's maybe topic worthy. People probably are curious about that because I'm always getting asked at presentations and conferences and things like, because I'm like, I'll admit to you, like I'm going to tell you things that work for me. But there's always like a Windows person in the audience who's like, how do I get the Windows version of that? And I'm like,
That's how I feel with Macs. So
that's good. Well, maybe okay. So I hope I'm about to learn the Windows version of SoundSource because it's great utility.
Yeah, there's a couple. So my interface comes with like a one. It's just like the Focusrite control software. It's like their mid-high level hardware that comes with this kind of like virtual routing software. So that's been pretty good. It works for almost everything. And then I route everything through Ableton anyway. So it's kind of like,
okay.
Again, a third layer. And then I do it with hardware too. So it's really redundant and awful. But yeah.
So what you're describing sounds pretty much like what I would do, because it's better. I always tell people when it fails on me, I'm like, I promise you this is like the net gain in productivity is actually good for me here, despite the...
I don't know if that's true for me. So I have like my smart home set up, and I have I have a button right here. You can't see, right under my desk. I could double tap it. Oh, this is perfect because it's not working. Exactly my point.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay. Oh, there it goes. My light's turned off.
Right.
I turn it back on. Sometimes it works. Usually it works. If I hold it down, it initiates this whole sequence to turn off my speakers and my interface and my monitors and like does everything. And it's like, oh, this is saving me so much time. But then I'll spend, I don't know, an hour a month fixing it when it doesn't work.
This is the thing, right? Yeah. I don't know. And like, I assume like, so if you're a Windows, let me guess, hold on. Are you like running Android home stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I've got like HomeKit, I'm all in on the Apple stuff. And I've got all these automations that are going, because we've got smart home, everything. But you've got the home, it's the Wild West out there with home automation. So like in order to get things to talk to each other, you got to do hacky stuff. And I've got a Homebridge server running on my Mac Mini over here. And and that gets our Dyson. We have like these air purifiers that also heat and cool the room. And you can get the Apple Home app to treat them like a fan, a thermostat, and an air sensor if you'd like install some hacky stuff on your computer, run some stuff. So I've got that going. But yeah, at least once a month, I gotta designate a Saturday morning or afternoon to like fixing the stuff.
You would appreciate this. I have 2 infrared transmitters that you can work with this whole thing. And so if there's any remote that is not like a smart device, like my air conditioner is not a smart device, it's just regular air conditioner, but it has a remote. So I can program this infrared, transmitter to do the functions that I need it to do. But the problem is there's no like talkback. So if it misses it once, it thinks it's on when it's off. Or it thinks it's off when it's on, because it's just like a toggle switch. So then I have this like smart outlet that it's plugged into, so I can like cut power to it and like hit the toggle button so it turns on. I have the sequence to like write itself, which okay, like so now I've made it really complicated just to fix the thing that was already like I could just hit the button on the remote.
Yeah,
but no, I want to do it with my voice.
It's fun to build it though. I feel like you get to a certain point of diminishing return where,
I mean, I get home and my house is the temperature I want it to be.
Sure. No, and it really does. Even when it doesn't demo well for guests, I tell them, I'm like, you have no idea. Like I come home and like my favorite ones are my good morning and my good night. Like at night, the blinds close, the security system arms, the lights dim, the TV turns on for watching some Succession or whatever is going to be the thing that night. And it's like the opposite sequence in the morning. The music comes on and plays me like nice tunes in the morning. And it's great. It's great.
Yeah, no, I have a good one for that as well. And My favorite's probably when I leave the house, because I have a sequence for it to keep my lights on for a couple minutes, so I can like start it and like finish up what I'm doing, leave, and then my outside lights are on, and like 5 minutes later they turn off, so I could get to my car, I could do all the things that I need to do, and I don't have to worry about it. And then it turns off my computer, the heat, everything. But the delay is really nice, because it's like, okay, I can do everything I need to do, and then by the time I leave, everything's off.
That's killer. That's killer. That's good. Yeah, I'm looking. We're eventually going to replace my wife's car, and I'm thinking to myself, like, some of these cars integrate. So Apple's got a platform. They got an app called Shortcuts, which is sort of like a just a graphical user interface for like building blocks of automations. And some of these cars offer actions. They'd like donate actions to, and I'm like, so some of my my leave for work thing can open the garage doors and start my car. That sounds maybe.
I made a dumb purchase, and it doesn't come until April or May, but I bought a Tesla, so so we're definitely going to go down that road, because they integrate quite well. So.
Yeah, they do. They actually really do. So I've researched this, because that's one of the things we're considering, and there's some competitors out there now. But yeah, I mean, the one thing they don't have is, like, as an Apple guy who's always, us Apple people, we like how things play nice together, and Tesla doesn't have CarPlay or Android Auto for that matter.
Or Android Auto. Yeah, no, they don't. They got their own.
So that's the question. Is their own thing good enough that I wouldn't miss that? Because Android Auto and CarPlay, I mean, people who haven't experienced it don't get that. It's like when you get into your car with one of those two platforms, like my podcast app that I like is just in my car. Like, I had to do nothing to get it there. The developer of that app had to do nothing they had to do something small, but it's a pretty easy thing. So, all right, well, you'll have to tell me if it's worth it. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's like, on the one end, they're kind of a software company who builds computers on wheels, and then you've got everyone else who's the old school, and they're like they're all converging on what they're good at. But I feel like as long as Tesla is the more competent software maker, I have to consider their stuff.
Yeah, and their whole vision is for you to get in the car, put your phone down, and it already knows where you're going. So, like, whether or not it works nice with the stuff that I'm used to, like, I believe that they will make it eventually, so I can literally put my phone down, it'll have some sort of reader or like thing enabled where it can get the directions from my phone, whether or not it's Android. It's like, it should be able to integrate. So
what drives me nuts, because I went this far to research it, is that you can, of course, send to the Tesla app your directions from either Apple Maps or Google Maps inside the app. But even though it uses Google Maps for the data in their like infotainment thing, it's not like the same. It's not the Google Maps app. So like,
you can't sign into it.
Right. So like, if I recently, because one of the things I like about, like, if I'm using Google Maps or Apple Maps and I'm searching for a gas station like 5 minutes before I get in my car already knows, what I was searching.
I won't have to search for gas stations. It's okay.
That's fair. Very fair. Hey, this is a pretty good music education podcast, if I say so myself.
So good.
Thank you for doing this, by the way. This is I've been kind of doing this as a hobbyist project for years, and then when COVID started and I kind of got some extra time to sort of put together some workflows, I've been able to more consistently publish it. I rebranded, I did a whole bunch of stuff, and it's just ever since I've been publishing more regularly, it just every time, every passing episode that I put together, I think to myself that like what you do is like more and more in the wheelhouse of kind of like what always comes up on this show. So it's very exciting to have you here. I'm going to probably just have to edit in an intro and do a cold open, because I'm going to probably have to, I want to leave some of that in. I mean,
feel free. Yeah. Use whatever. I'm recording on my end. So whatever you need, okay. I'll keep it going.
Yeah. I mean, and with that, that being said, like, I don't even like really have a good start. I guess I should just ask, for purposes of me, maybe like in post editing an intro, do you all of your branding as Christopher Bill? I referred to you as Chris, as did your management. Do you go by Chris?
I've only said in podcast form that I prefer Christopher, but they give me crap for it now all the time. So it's like, oh no, he prefers Christopher. Professionally, I go by Christopher, but it does not matter. I'm not somebody who cares.
Okay. Who is that? Your management tells you that? They give you crap for that?
No, the podcasters, like the Brass Junkies guys, and yeah, I said it one time in passing, and now it's just anytime somebody says my name, they go, he prefers Christopher.
That's so funny. They'll do that though. Those guys.
They're great.
That's how they play. Yeah, I love them. Actually, so I should say, because I guess suppose we're somewhere near the beginning of where I'll start editing some of this conversation in, but I just would say, like, to anyone who has not heard so you've done, I think you've done 2 episodes with the Brass Junkies.
I did 2 Brass Junkies, and then I just did the Entrepreneurial Musician, TEM podcast as well.
In that one, I feel like as I was reaching out to some local teachers in my district and some listeners to the show, just to kind of put out there some possible, field some questions for you. A lot of stuff that came up, I feel like you addressed very concretely and concisely, just like really, really well in that episode with Andrew Hitz. So I'm going to link it in the show notes and just tell people, like, I don't intend to ask you necessarily to tell your life story. You've done it before elsewhere. So I just feel like I'm a referential kind of person. Like,
sure,
I have some questions about that, but like definitely people should go listen to that. I just feel like, the journey from performing to being a content creator. Do you like that term, content creator? I know some musicians who have problems with it.
I don't know that there's a better term, but I don't like that term. I mean, I guess artist is probably a better term, but like the medium or the like where you publish your art has never really dictated what you call the artist until now. So I don't love it, but I mean, it does put you in the box where you belong. So yeah, I would love a better term, but I guess artist is probably what it is. And that's not really descriptive enough, is it?
I mean, it can be. It's,
yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said for, definitely, like, you were ahead of the YouTube thing. There's lots of people making their way on YouTube. Shortly after the past year that we've had, lots more people are maybe who were not previously comfortable with YouTube are putting some things out there. I don't know. Yeah, but content creator, I don't know. It just has it just sounds like, it has that corporate feeling, like someone's just trying to.
Yeah. Like, it gives me the same, like, skeeviness as calling, like, the people who listen to your art consumers. It's like, all you must do is consume. Like, that's all you are to me. And it's like, no, this is like a relationship. And what I'm doing, hopefully, is, like, important. I don't know if it's, like, whatever it is. But, yeah, content creator just, like, takes all of the like, is it any good out of it? And it's just like, this is a thing that is meant to be consumed, the end. And a lot of times it is that, but hopefully, I mean, when I do it, it's not, because it's important to me. Like, at least if nobody sees it or ever, like, gets a view on my videos, like, I still got something out of it. I still am happy with it. I'm still proud of it. Like, that kind of stuff, where a lot of my colleagues, like, are just trying to figure out what the algorithm wants and trying to, get their views and get their whatever sponsorships and make money, which, like, of course you have to do all of that as well. But when that's the goal, you become a content creator. And when the goal is to make something cool that you like and hopefully other people like it, then yeah, you're an artist. And of course they're blurred, but I hopefully try to stay on the side of artists, because that's where I started. When I started, you couldn't make money doing what I do. So it was only that. It could only be that. And there weren't that many people watching them yet either, so, like, anywhere. So it had to be that. So I'm very precious about that. But when it comes to, like, talking about it, of course, I'm a content creator. I'm a YouTuber. You can't get around that.
Yeah, certainly. And I think to myself, YouTube, even as a platform, I feel like, it's hard for me as a person who, like, fools around on TikTok a number of minutes a day that is more than zero, to not kind of think about, like, how those tools have sort of, like, democratized, like, the content creation process, and how YouTube is still very, and at least the way that you approach YouTube is still very much something that, your musicianship is always super clear and comes through in your videos, but, like, also so does the editing, the production. Like, it's just clear that you've taken so much care and concern over that. And I think that is itself kind of a craft in an artistry that can't be overlooked about making online video.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like the reason my video, the reason there's a video aspect at all is because it was on YouTube. The first videos I did, there wasn't a video because that's not what I was doing. I was writing arrangements and recording the parts myself. What I was making was multi-tracked arrangements. I was not making videos, but I put it on YouTube because that was the platform that I understood and that was around at the time. Like SoundCloud, I guess, was a thing, but it didn't feel like a place to put that stuff. So I put it on YouTube with a picture of me. There was no video on the original ones. And the reason I did a video was because it was like, that's what this platform, is designed for. So I started making a video aspect and I started working on video editing, and all of those ideas came after because of the platform. So yes, absolutely. Like that's part of it. The audience and the algorithm and the platform itself will adapt what you're doing, and you'll adapt to that, to just like what you're seeing, what other people are using that platform for. If all of a sudden there was like a ton of podcasts on YouTube and they didn't do any like visual representation, it was just like the logo or something, and that got really, really popular, then more people would do that because they'd see that's what's happening. But that, of course, did not happen, and you need a video aspect if you're going to post on YouTube. So it's just a matter of like seeing what else is doing well, seeing what else is out there and what's possible, and then kind of emulating that. And so yeah, that's the only reason I started doing a video aspect, was because it was on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, and you have to, there's like, you are right to say that there's kind of like a model of maybe like what works for each of these online platforms. Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit, actually. I thought one of the most interesting parts of when you were talking with Andrew Hitz on his show was like kind of reconciling, like, and I'm going to just, I'll just say about a year ago, I had what I would call a viral TikTok. And
okay.
I'm defining viral in that way where it's like relative to my normal amount of attention, it was big. Sure. I wouldn't call it like big, but I will just say that I think it effectively reached every person who ever played Sleigh Ride in their middle or high school band, because some guy recorded all the woodwind parts in the duet feature, and then I was like, and then someone did trumpet, and I was like, all right, sure, all the percussion parts, cool. And and my students dared me to do it. We were online learning. I had too much free time, and some teachers will be upset to hear me describe online learning that way, but I did it, and it went like, it got quite a lot of attention relative to what I'm used to, and I thought, okay. So like a couple of weeks later, I was like, I should do another one. Obviously, people like to see me play percussion instruments, so I did a duet. I played some vibraphone to someone who was like doing a very exact kind of interpretation of one of those, those like Christmas decorations that like have wacky lyrics that are mismatched to the time signature and the melody.
Yeah, of course.
She's doing a singing through one of those, and I'm like, I'll add some vibraphone accompaniment, and then like kind of like had some attention. The people were like, ha ha ha, cool, and like nowhere near the level of attention. So I thought to myself, I bet if I just overdubbed myself playing percussion instruments, that would be, you know what I mean? Like it's easy to see like that people obviously like connected to that one thing that I did. Mm-hmm. And I think to myself, a lot of people are like, you should do more of that. And I'm like, well, first of all, this could also be partly luck that this one thing was successful. And also I don't want to do that. I don't want to just sit around and multi-track percussion parts to high school band music. So, I mean, how do you, looking at like the early days, how much of the video editing that you've learned do you feel like is sort of meeting that demand of what people want, versus sort of like also just personally you're interested in having more control over that process?
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, they're like the algorithm and the audience are right. When you have a following, like a big enough sample size to know what that is. Meaning the videos that do better generally are the ones that are more engaging. We don't like to point the finger back at ourselves so much, especially when a lot of it is luck, or maybe all of it is luck. But when you have people watching the videos and one does really well and you put a bunch of extra time into making it more engaging, or in my case, this past year, I've hired a video editor who is a professional video editor and can do way more stuff that I could do. She works for me, like does one video a month, and then I'll do the other three. But I see the stuff that she does, and it's like, this is so much fun to watch compared to what I'm used to. You know, I could watch it on mute and still enjoy it, kind of stuff. So maybe that's an exaggeration on a music video, but still. Yeah, so those are the things where it's like, this is a better video, you know, and I can be cynical all I want about like why things don't do well or why things do well, but at the end of the day, like, yeah, of course this is a better end product, and it's more fun, and it's better art, you know, like if you can have the like the visual aspect, not only like, you know, go with the audio, but also enhance it in ways and tell a different story in other ways. You know, those are the things that like really excites me about that I never did before. Like there were years where I would finish the audio and make it as good as I possibly could, and then I'd do the thing I do with the video, which was just like 4 of me on screen the whole time, nothing changing. No even like captions to show like, oh, this is the first trombone part, this is the melody, they're all the same size. Like once in a while I'd wear a funny costume or something, but like that was so an afterthought. And at a certain point, you're like, okay, so how do I make this better? Because of course I want to make this better, whatever this is. And it's like that video aspect is the thing that's holding me back. I think about it with my hardware too. It's like, what's the thing that I have to invest money in that's going to actually make a difference? And so, yeah, I could have invested that time that I was spending, you know, making the video better back in the audio and making the audio even better, but that's diminishing returns. Am I really going to see a better end product? Is the art going to be better if I spend that extra 6 hours on the audio that I've already spent 4 days on? Or do I spend that 6 hours on the video that I've spent 20 minutes on? Right. So those are the kinds of like things when you're doing all of the parts of the process and juggling all those, you know, balls or putting on those different hats. Like that's where you're like, okay, what is the thing that's actually holding me back to making this art better?
Yeah, interesting. So there's like an artistic angle, an efficiency, productivity angle, and then also sort of like a delegating to the person who's proficient at the job kind of piece of it as far as like hiring a video editor goes. I guess like,
that's the new one.
Yeah. I mean, since we started off talking about fiddling with home automation in our spare time and fix, you know, you have to kind of a little bit, like the deeper you go, the more you have to like fiddling with the tools and like kind of engaging with those questions. I guess so. I'm wondering, just as someone who is a musician who took on a lot of these extra technical skills as, you know, means to kind of get where you were going. I mean, do you feel like you miss those little bits now that you've kind of have gained an affinity for video editing and things like this? Do you miss that now, having passed it off?
If I stopped doing it completely, I'm sure I would, but we trade off, and I'm still like repackaging the videos for TikTok and coming up with those. All the TikToks that I film now, I'm doing myself. So there's all of these other, like, there's plenty of video editing to go around. But the thing that I've really noticed is I'll watch one of her edits and it'll give me all these ideas of what I could do, because there aren't that many people, doing professional edits of multi-track videos. Like, it's a very specific niche. And so you don't actually see good examples of it, of like, what's a professional budget going to do with this concept? And so the first time I hired her, I was like, I don't really know what you're going to do with this, because it's just 5 of me playing the whole time. And then what came back was like all of these fast edits, these like slow zooms, and the stuff that just like keeps it active the whole time. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, right. You can do all of that stuff. And so that inspires me to do my own edits a lot more actively and use these ideas. So it's like, not only is she doing something that I couldn't do with the like green screen edits and the comping and all of these like really, really cool, my Halloween videos she did, I'm just like, I could have, like, that would have taken me months.
Is that the one with like little U's kind of spinning around in front of like a pink, like a purplish kind of spooky background?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes. And like, she turned me into a spider at one point. I bought a morph suit. You know what a morph suit is? Like a green man like suit. So it's head to toe, like green screen, but you wear it. And so I played the trombone part wearing this suit. So the only thing you could see when you take out the green is the trombone playing itself. and she like put that on like a spider. So the spider was playing the trombone. It was just like, this is stuff that it just would take me so long, especially with a trombone like that that's reflecting the green screen the whole time. Like, that's a nightmare. I've tried it. It's a nightmare to make that look good. So those are the things where it's like, okay, that's above my pay grade for sure. But the individual edits, like, it makes my stuff better. But do I miss it? Like some aspects of it, I think I would. But when that end product comes back and it's, like I said, better than anything I could do, and I didn't have to do all that work, it's like knowing how much work it was because I am a video editor makes me value her so much more, I think, versus just like, oh, can you just do this? It's like every email I sent to her, I'm like apologizing up front and at the end. It's like, I know this is awful. And she's like, no, it's literally my job. It's what you're paying me to do. But being a video editor, you respect that so much. And it's, I think it's really important. Kind of similar to like maybe, there were these majors in college that were, Studio Tech, I think they were called.
Okay.
I think I got that wrong, but it was basically like all the Broadway stuff. So you had set designers, you had costume designers, lighting, stage managers, you had all those different jobs. But their first year, every 2 or 3 weeks, they would do a different job. And it may have been the first 2 years. So by the end of that, they've done every single job. And then they go into their, proficiency, their whatever their thing is, their major. So then they spend the rest of the time doing their lighting, and that's all they do. But they've done all the other jobs. They've done costume design. They've done it all, so they know what that takes, and they respect them a lot more, and they also, can communicate on their level. So I'm very grateful for all of the, the 10 years that I've done every single job. And now when I offload that stuff, I feel like, first of all, be a better boss, but also like, I can have those creative conversations with them realistically, and they'll know that I know that they know, that kind of stuff.
Right. But actually, this isn't even a question that I was planning on asking you. But given given your musical background, like when you were studying, I mean, you learned so much of this stuff on your own. Like, what do you feel like is? I guess we have to speak kind of broadly and generally, but like, what do you feel like is like really missing from, like, I can think of a couple kind of like music technical skills that I did not learn in my university program. I didn't, audio editing, video, MIDI, making a beautiful score. Like I had plugging in a microphone to a mixer, like none of that. I learned that all on my own time.
Yeah, same. It kind of feels like if you were going to redesign the system of education, like you could try to do the well-rounded thing and teach everybody a little bit of all of those things, and they'll probably sleep through most of them. But it feels like there should be an option to like just have these very specific like concentrations that you can learn a lot about. Like if there was, but you have to do a few of them, right? So it's like, here are these like 25 different things: music business, entrepreneurship, all of those things, recording engineering, songwriting, whatever it is, arranging, all of those different things. And then you pick like 3 or 4 of them. And I feel like that would be a little bit better than just making everybody do everything, because I certainly went to school with people. I was a classical trombone major, to get me into like a symphony orchestra. It's not what I want to do or will do, or, but at the time I was in school with people who absolutely wanted to do that. So if you forced them to learn about MIDI, it would be a waste of their time, frankly, because they just need to get in the practice room and go take the audition and they're done. That's not what I wanted to do. And so a little bit you could extrapolate it's a waste of my time to do mock auditions. But I mean, I think I got a lot out of that, so in a way that I don't know that they would get out of learning about a DAW or something. But maybe learning a little bit about that I mean, that is the college system, is to have that well-rounded education. So that's definitely missing, for sure, just kind of the tech. But that's the nature of the beast when your professors are 20-30 years older than you, at least. The other side of that is just like, how do you how do you be a fun person to be around? Because the like networking aspect is just, it's just not, it's not sufficient. They say like, I don't know if they even teach you how to do that. Even like the business school stuff, it's skeevy and bad. Like it's not good training for networking. Like true networking is going out to a bar with a bunch of musicians and not talking about work. You know?
Yeah, I know, right.
That's, nobody ever says that. Well, I guess in my school they kind of did, because there were a couple like Broadway musicians who were the professors, and they know that better than anybody. You know, there's no auditions. You just, somebody recommends you because you're fun to be around and you play well. So those are the things that like it was blatantly obvious like the second I got out of college that like, oh, I have something inherently which is like I think I'm fun to be around. That like I almost started to feel bad because I'm like, there are people who just spent all this time in the practice room and they're better players than me, but I know I'll get the gig because I'm fine and I'm fun to be around. It's like a weird thing to talk about because you don't want to be like, your personality sucks, so that's why you're not going to get the gig. But like, it's true.
Always taken so personally, but it is true.
Well, it's personal. That's why.
Yeah, it is. You can see it develop though. Teaching as many students as I do, many of whom, you know, go to college auditions and are like putting themselves out there. But like, you can see it early on. It's like, all right, how do you start to have these conversations about like, you know, these kinds of things where it's like maybe what you're suggesting that they do like feels like it's going against every strand of their inner being.
Yes,
but it's true.
And like,
I've been told
there are jobs that they'd be good at, you know, that you don't need those skills, and there is an audition or there is like an interview process that like your skill set matters more. But in like generally the music industry, it's that one area where like the personality comes first a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, I've been told like to my face by contractors before, you are easier to work with and more accommodating and flexible and fun to be around than the previous person who had this job, and that's why we keep calling you. And I'm like, okay.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, it feels
easy.
Weird.
Yeah,
it feels
it does,
weird
though.
to like tell that to a student. Like you can't have that conversation. So if there were a way to put that into like a college setting, I mean, honestly, for me, it's like go to the party and don't practice a day a week or whatever it is, you know, like, like it's that the college system is like, you have to be working, practicing 6 hours a day. And it's like, you are actually setting them up for failure if they're trying to do one of these jobs where you need to remember how to be a person. So it's like, it's actually counterproductive sometimes. So that's the main thing that I would say like about that kind of institutionalized music thing.
I feel like there's a musical angle to that though too. I was just my wife and I went to go see. Do you know Nate Smith, drummer?
Yeah, he's one of my favorites.
He's great. I assume, you know, I guess he's sometimes by some he's perceived as like a drummer's drummer. Like drummers love him because his technique is so much in service of his music, the music that he's trying to put out there, you know, the statement he wants to make. But I guess I shouldn't assume that everyone listening knows who Nate Smith is. Anyway, we saw his solo act, like his band in DC last Thursday, and I was talking to him for a little bit after the show. And I mean, he was just saying like, we were just kind of talking about how like, because he's a complex player at times and he's super technically proficient, but I just never felt like that there was not space for play in the set. You know, I told him, I was just like, I just felt like you all like are not like super fussy about like making mistakes on stage. Like you just let it roll. And kind of like the dichotomy between those two things, like having that, I don't know. I just feel like getting out of the practice room and like going to the party is equally good for you as a musician, to just get out of this space of like that no mistakes can ever happen.
Yeah, there's also in a kind of tangent way, similar to like the fact that you have to listen to music to know what good music is, or know what you like, I guess is a better way to say that. And a lot of jazz musicians do that quite well. They listen a lot, do a lot of transcriptions. Classical musicians do not really do that very much, not as much as like not in a way that it's in the practice room kind of listening to come up with a good concept of sound and a good vocabulary, and that's just kind of like so important. And so it's that way of saying like practice is one aspect, but you also have to listen and go out and know what it's like to be around other people and hear what other people are offering, hear what your colleagues are offering. It's not all a big competition. There's so much to be learned from that. And I mean, even just if I think about the past 5 years, a lot of the opportunities I've gotten and the people I've hired are people from college. And that's just like a random, I just ended up at this, like, as the school is called Purchase Conservatory of Music outside of New York City. Tiny school. It's very weird. We all ended up there for like weird reasons. Nobody really like wanted to go there. And then we found it and we're like, oh, this is cool. So the fact that we all ended up there, it feels very, very random. And so the fact that I'm now using all of those people as my like inner circle and like network feels extra random. And then a bunch of them like broke and ended up being like, radio musicians and people who are doing really, really cool things. And we use each other now and we see each other doing all of these things. And it's like, we stay in touch and all of that. It's just like, this is such a random thing. And if I just stayed in the practice room the whole time, I wouldn't have those people. So important, I think.
Yeah. When I was in grad school, I was a full-time graduate student. So I just like I had the opportunity to take some coursework that was just not required for my major, which was percussion performance. And so I took almost every class that a jazz master's degree program at University of Maryland had to offer. And I was just like, from the theory class, which my first jazz theory class was like, so I'm like a graduate student at this point, and I'm taking classes that if you're a freshman jazz performance major, you're taking these. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, from those very first moments that I was taking, like my first freshman year theory class, like we're just looking at the score, but the jazz people are like listening to everything and they can hear everything. I mean, I remember the first time I sat in with like there's like lots of, great, being in the DC metro area, you've got lots of great local area jazz musicians who are just like, getting their doctorate or something. So you have like just lots of great minds in there. And I remember the first time that we're listening to a recording and then analyzing it, and they're like, just hearing him list off all the extensions in the last chord of the tune and thinking like, wow, you can hear all that. They just didn't, like, I had to just pluck out a piano to understand what all the different, six chords were, that
sure.
all the different augmented six chords. But that's happening from the very, very beginning of understanding even theory, not even to speak to the idea of like developing a tonal concept of what your instrument should sound like or anything like that.
Yeah. It's like something about just finding what speaks to you, and that could be vocabulary, it could be like what they're actually playing, it could be the tunes themselves, or it could just be like the way they're playing, the style, the tone, whatever. And you're going to emulate all of that and have that in your ear when you play, which is just like so important. That's how you develop your sound. That's how you develop like who you are as a musician. And I guess I didn't really understand that, and I didn't even see it in myself until honestly very, very recently. I just did these throwback videos to all my old Halloween like songs, because I've been doing them for 11 years now, which is crazy. And so I did one a year, and I did Thriller early on because it's such a good song for brass and everything's cool. And so I reposted it, and I don't know what came over me, but I was listening to it and it just felt like the arrangement was kind of just flat, not like in pitch, but in style. It was just kind of not a whole lot of dynamic contrast, not a lot of articulation contrast, all of this. It was like I was just playing the notes. I'm like giving myself some credit. I think I was in college when I recorded it, or just out, so it's like fine. But I picked up my trombone and I played it, first of all by ear, which like I don't think I could have done back then. So that's like one thing where it's like, oh right, you've gotten better. But I just picked it up and played it without remembering what key it was in or anything. And I was like, this is so much more exciting the way I'm playing it now. So I pulled up Instagram and played like a little like, here's how it was, here's what I would do differently. And that was kind of when I realized like I couldn't even hear those things. It's almost like a middle schooler trying to swing, and you're like, you're like, you play them like, this is what it's supposed to sound like. You hear the difference, right? And they look at you like, no, I don't hear the difference, because they don't. You have to hear it. And I remember being that middle schooler, and now I remember being the, fresh graduate, playing something that I thought was hip. And now here I am looking back at both of those things, being like, you couldn't even hear what you couldn't hear because you hadn't heard enough music. And now I've just like completely filled my head with funk music, and I can't play without an exciting, like, contrasting articulation, because it's just what I do. And so first of all, that's really exciting looking back. It's kind of exciting looking forward, because you got to imagine, like, 6 years from now, I'll look back at this moment and be like, you really thought that was musical? So it's like we're always bringing more music in and being able to do more with it and express ourselves better, I think, is really what that means.
Yeah, it's kind of depressing, but also exciting. It's like, okay, because it's like once you become a certain kind of critical listener, you think you're hearing everything there is to hear in the music, but like, no, maybe not. So,
no, with mixing, that's really happening for me. Like the stuff that I really couldn't hear it. Like my friend who's a professional mixer and does mastering now, he would play these two examples and be like, here's this mic, clearly this one is, and I'm like, it literally sounds the same to me. Our ears are just tuned into what they're tuned into. The more we listen, the more sensitive. Another thing to think about is, for me as a trombone player, I can listen to 8 different trombone players without knowing the names. I could identify all 8. Or if I don't know them, I could be like, oh, that person sounds like this player, right?
Yeah.
It's just like clear as day. But you show me 8 different flute players, and I'm gonna be like, well, sounds like a flute. So it's like even in my world, maybe even with a trumpet, I don't know about that. I might be able to distinguish, but like even in my world of instrumental music, it's like my ears are tuned into what they're tuned into, and I could play 2 different trombone players for you and be like, it's wildly different, and I know most people are just going to be like, yeah, it's definitely a trombone. Like, okay. So yeah, like what are we used to listening to, and what are we listening for? Those nuances, like our ears can be very sensitive in a way that we don't give ourselves credit for, but you have to train them.
Yeah, well, and connecting with the sensitivity, like what you're hearing, also, but connecting it to a context, because like music never exists in a vacuum. So like knowing who is that person, whose sound you can identify. Yeah. But that's huge. That's huge. Well, let me just so we kind of just like went right into the deep end. You're a Windows person. I've learned. You know how I had a feeling that might be true is because I know you're an Audition person. Are you an Adobe Audition person?
Is that their like audio editing?
I'm thinking of like Premiere in my head, but saying Adobe Audition, which is their audio thing. But no, I'm sorry. I'm speaking about video editing. So you use Adobe Premiere, right?
I do use Adobe Premiere. I'm pretty sure nobody has ever opened Adobe Audition, but I could be wrong.
There's a weird. I listen to a handful of technology podcasts, and amongst the and kind of like some of the ones I listen to are hosts who are running the same circle, so they're probably influencing each other. So this might just be like a weird corner of the podcasting world, but there are people who like it as in the same way that some people will use Audacity to like just drag an MP3 into an editor and make a real quick cut or add a quick effect, but they don't need a digital audio workstation. It just seems Adobe Audition just seems like way too powerful for that kind of stuff for me. But I know it's got some built-in plugins that are proprietary that do some interesting vocal adjustments.
That's true. I have seen there's like a Awesome Audio, I think it's called, where it just uses its AI to like match your speech. So we could basically take this conversation out to a busy street and it'll match, like make it sound like it in the studio. It has some cool stuff that I've definitely seen. I think it's more geared for podcasting. I'm not totally sure, but yeah. So anyway, I'd use Adobe Premiere for video editing and Ableton for audio editing. So yeah, definitely Adobe Suite stuff.
Yeah, and I learned this about you because actually, so there was a resource, and I don't know if you made this resource when a lot of schools went to an online learning model, but there's a resource. Yeah, there was a great resource that I just want to say thanks for doing it, because like our school district was kind of passing that Google Doc that you had made. Basically, I would consider it to just be like a sort of a general how-to, and like here's some resources for some software that can help you get up and running with making kind of more broadly video content, but I think specifically a lot of traditional performing arts teachers were like trying to make like these like, you know, choir, kind of like these choir band orchestra videos to represent their concert repertoire. And you just had this great document. And what I liked about it is that when people ask me these questions, I'm like, I know what I know, but you were just like in that document so thorough. There were just so many options for any person coming from any technological background or any kind of hardware device. So that was great. Thank you for doing that. I sent that to so many people.
It was shared, I think it was 600,000 times in the first 2 days.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
It was just a Google Doc. So I was in the studio in Phoenix. My writing partner was living there at the time, working at a studio. And so I hired my other writing partner in New York. We flew out to Phoenix, and that was like whatever, the second week of March, right?
Yeah.
Oh, good times. And and we were there, and like the world was shutting down while we were in the studio. Like we didn't even know, because we'd be in the studio all day with our phones off, and then like at night, my buddy's now wife was like, "What's going on? Are we gonna even be able to like get home?" So that night it was like in between our last couple days at the studio, and I was like, I feel like I am like uniquely qualified for this moment, because I've been doing remote recordings. I've been doing all of this for, at that point, I guess 7 years professionally. So yeah, I just went through, and I definitely researched some extra stuff. Like, you know, you type, if you know what's out there, you can Google like alternatives to that stuff.
Yes.
So I did a bunch of research. It wasn't like I had all of that knowledge in my head just to go, but you know, as I went on, it got a little more thorough, and then I did like a secondary document that was like the full how-to for remote recordings, virtual like orchestra stuff. And
you've got a video tutorial too.
I have, that one I came out with after. And so at the bottom of that document, I just put like, hey, by the way, like if you have a budget for this stuff and you want to hire me to do your virtual choir video or whatever, you know, shoot me an email. And from, I think the next day I got hired by the Chicago Symphony to do their civic orchestra video. And I didn't have a day off until this past June. I was doing that literally like every single day, besides 4 days when I had surgery on my sinuses and I had to take 4 days off. I literally did not have a day off for like over a year. And I never even publicized that I did it, other than putting my email at the bottom of that thing. So I was a full-time video editor during the pandemic. I didn't have much time for music. It was wild.
That is so wild. Wow. 600,000 times in a day. That's nuts.
Yeah. Yes, that was crazy, and people were like reaching out to me nonstop. It was just like this. I mean, everybody was not sure what was happening, and then the other side of that, you got to remember like what our headspace was at the time. We were like, okay, this is crazy, but by the summer, it's all going to be over, and we're going to go back to normal. Like that's where we were, you know. Right. We were like, certainly by the summer, and then people were like, you know, they're saying by the fall, and people were like, oh, don't even say that. So like, that was where we were, and so it was kind of like we were all a little bit excited to like try something new, but only for a little bit of like, that was where it was. And so people were hiring me to do all that stuff. Nobody was like burnt out yet and all of that. Believe me, we've gone through it all now.
Yeah, that's so wild. Wow. Well, let me ask you. So like one of the things I feel like is what I like to talk about when I have people on the show is musicianship, pedagogy, and then like where do the tools fit in to that? Like how do they support that process? So I guess I'm just curious. A lot of people who submitted questions to me were just like wondering like, what are some of the parts of your basic software and hardware setup? Like what gear do you swear by? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, it was very inexpensive stuff. A lot of it was gifted to me, either by friends who were upgrading or literally like Christmas gifts from, you know, my family. Yep. And so I had, the original one was a Shure SM58 microphone, which is, you're like go into any bar in the world and they'll have a box of them. And it's like a good all around microphone for $100. And then I had it was called a Shure X2U interface, I'm almost positive they don't make them anymore, but they probably make a version of it. And it was a one in, one out USB interface. So you plug the microphone in one end, or the XLR cable, and then it comes out into a USB, and you can plug the headphones into that little stick. So it was like just this little tiny stick that you could convert this microphone into something that you could plug into your computer. The only reason I did all of that was because it was before I had a smartphone. It was like 4 or 5 years before I would have a smartphone. So, like, I did it as cheaply as I possibly could for to get like professional quality audio. That is, like, obviously I could just buy a little tiny microphone or use like a headphone one, but to get decent quality audio, that was the most inexpensive I could do. Probably the X2U interface was maybe $50. So XLR cable, maybe $10. So we're talking $160 to get up and running with everything. Maybe a music stand or a mic stand as well. So we're talking under $200 to have everything. Now you could do it with your phone. You know, if you have a smartphone, that's a very crazy processor that you can have in your pocket. You can buy a microphone just for that. And if I were starting today, I would probably do that if I had to guess. Or get like a USB mic that plugs right into the computer. For reasons that I'm sure you are aware of, I'm glad I didn't, because it's like you can upgrade each little part of it. And if you buy a USB microphone, if you want to upgrade it, you just have to get a new one. You can't keep any part of that. You can't keep the preamp. You can't keep anything. So it makes it a much harder process to upgrade your equipment. Or if you get a new phone and the microphone only plugs into that, like old, you know, there's reasons where it's like, oh, now this is obsolete, versus my equipment that I could still use the original equipment I had today with my computer. Now it all works. So, so that was the original stuff. But I mean, the real advice is to have the idea in your mind of what you want to accomplish with the gear, and then figure out how to do it without paying any money. And then if you get to a point where you're like, well, I have to, then you'll know what you have to buy. And that's kind of the process I always try to proselytize, because it's like, if you just buy the thing because you think you need it, you might not use it, and that's just a waste of money or time or whatever. There are a few things I've bought like that I'll give you an example of. Like I bought a talk box, which is like this, for people who don't know, it's this basically an amplifier that you plug like a tube into, like a literal.
You're gonna ruin my dreams because I want one of these. Are you gonna tell me I don't want one of these?
Well, it's really fun. It's so basically if you put your phone up to your mouth and go wah 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 on the speaker, that's basically what this is, but like a professional version. And you plug like a keyboard or a guitar into it. And one day I was like, what if you plugged a trombone into it? What would that sound like? And obviously you have to put the tube in your mouth. So maybe not obviously. You have to put the tube in your mouth. So so the way I would do that is I would route this thing through my looper. So I'd play a phrase and then loop it, and when I hit loop, it would go through the talk box, and then I could put it in my mouth and do the thing. So that's why I bought it, to see what it would sound like. But I bought it really because it was like, this is cool, not because I had an artistic vision where it's like, oh, I need this thing. So anytime I've bought something like that without the artistic vision in mind, it just sits on a shelf, and it was an expensive purchase that I didn't need to spend money on. Versus when I get to the point in a creative process and it's like okay, here's an example. I did Circles by Post Malone, and the idea was that it would be a Marvel superhero theme version of this tune. And I like wrote a Latin choir. I got a bunch of collaborators involved, and I got to a certain point and it was like, I really need this like cinematic percussion, because it like doesn't work without these like giant booms and like snare hits and stuff. And so I went online and I found this. It was literally like a percussion pack for trailers, for like movie trailers. A professional pack. This is like what they use in movie trailers. And it was maybe like $150 or something. And I bought it, and it was perfect, and it's exactly what I needed. And now I use it all the time whenever I need something like super epic like that. And so that's where it's like, the reason I bought it was because I needed it for this thing. And then I use it and I get it, versus I'm buying it first because maybe I'll use it someday. It'll be nice to have. Like that should never be the process, I don't think. So for all the hardware, all the software, everything, it's like you wait till you get to that wall and you decide, is there a way that I could do this without spending money? And is that good enough? I used Audacity for many, many, many years. And then all of a sudden it was like, I really want to do these things and make it that next, take that next step. That's a hard transition. It's not as easy as just like buying this thing and now it's better. But yeah, that's the idea anyway. So do it for as cheaply as you possibly can. Don't buy stuff unless you need it. And then buy stuff because you'll know you need it, because you'll reach that wall and you'll already be researching this stuff at that point.
That's such a good approach and attitude to have about it. It's funny, when the pandemic first started, I was getting a lot of people were just asking me, like, what do I do to teach private lessons? Because that's something that people know that I do quite a lot of. And sure. I was just getting asked this question like so much that I was like, I'm just going to write a blog post and explain to everyone that actually you can teach a private lesson on FaceTime with a phone. It's really going to be okay. And I was a little snarky. I was like, here's my real low tech setup for teaching. And then we ended up realizing we were going to have to teach public school for when we understood, okay, we're in this for a while. I got like real fun with OBS, like open broadcasting software, and the Stream Deck and like the Ableton push and eventually I was like, okay, here we go, take two. And I was like, here's the high tech, super fussy version in case you want it. Here's how it looked with like loopback routing wires and everything. And so there's definitely two approaches, but like that second approach that was only where my head was, because it was born out of actually trying to solve real problems with online teaching. Right. Whereas the first one, I was like, if we're, you can totally get by with so much less.
So is that your way of asking me what my like ridiculous high tech version of what I do now is?
Well, I was going to ask you that, so I guess it is that way.
Yeah. It's crazy because I've upgraded every little tiny thing. Like I was saying before, you look at what's going to actually make a difference to the quality of the art, and what's the weakest link. And so I've upgraded everything, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times over the past 10 years. And you look at any little piece and you're like, wow, that's like a couple $1,000s, or that's a couple $1,000s. And it's like, I would never bought all of this. Like, I didn't go out and just spend $20,000 on my equipment. I like saved up, and over the course of a year, I would upgrade one little thing, So now we have the microphone is the latest thing. It's a Royer 121, which is like the microphone that trombones are recorded on for like pop music, for all the Thriller stuff. It was, I believe, that the earlier version of that microphone on that record. A lot of movie stuff, trombones will be using that mic. And so it's been on my like wish list for literal years. And I was lucky enough to be on a Zoom call with this guy Jerry Hay, who is the guy who actually arranged all of those horn parts for like Thriller and Quincy Jones and all of that. And he was talking about the mics he used, and he goes, yeah, the trombone, it's this one, like the U20 or the Royer 121. And I looked at my browser and it was like bookmarked, and I was like, okay. So literally on the Zoom call, I like bought it. I was like, okay, we're done here. But yeah, so that mic, and then I have the Focusrite Claret. Focusrite makes these really quite powerful interfaces and preamps for a low budget. So you can get I guess it's the Scarlet series is their like introductory version, which is what I had before after that X2U. So that one took me through many years, and I've recently upgraded to this one. Has better preamps and sounds a lot better. And then yeah, the software, I finally paid for all the Adobe stuff. I was using Adobe Premiere Elements, which was this little, light version of the software that they made over probably a decade ago now. And I think I bought it for $40 with a student discount in college. And I was using it. And then at one point, I got like a touchscreen laptop, and it wasn't optimized for it. And I was sitting in a hotel room getting really mad about it, that it wasn't working. And I was like, right, so I've been doing this as my full-time job for 6 years. I could probably pay for the software that allows me to do my job. So that's what, I pay for the subscription for Adobe. Maybe I'm the only one who ever does that, but I actually do. And then Ableton Live is my digital audio workstation, just because when I was in high school, a friend of mine got some MIDI keyboard or something, and it came with a free download of it, and he already had it. So he gave me the free download, and that's what I learned on. It's literally the reason I use Ableton. I'm pretty grateful because it allows me to do a lot of cool stuff, and I think Pro Tools is really clunky. And I don't have a Mac, so I can't use Logic. Same thing for Adobe Premiere for video editing. Since I don't have a Mac, I can't do Final Cut. If I started today, I would almost certainly use what is the Davinci Resolve.
Oh, yeah, that's really popular, and they're great. That development team is like, I know I just ordered one of these new M1 Macs. We'll see if it comes by the new year, but they were featured on the stage of the keynote announcing that, because they had already had their software was like ready to go with this new transition, and I was just like, okay, so those are the people, because that app is free, and that gets mentioned a lot in actually, you know, specifically around the time that a lot of people were looking for a way to make these videos. I kept seeing it come up, and it's like a super well-featured app for a good price. And
yes. So I mean, that software, as far as I understand, is like a color correcting software for feature films. They used it in a bunch of the like Marvel movies and stuff. It's a full professional, you know, many thousands of dollars software for the color grading, but you can just use it for the video editing without the color grading stuff, like those options, which cost money. So it's like this really powerful video editing software. It wasn't around when I was starting, but if it were, absolutely I would do it. I mean, I started on Windows Movie Maker because it was the option that was available to me. So again, it's like, just do what you could do. But then I wanted to do a split screen video, and you couldn't do that in that software. Also, there's a software that just came out. It's called Clipchamp. I have not looked into it at all, but it opened up on my, you know, when you update Windows, they now have a video editing software that's built in, like Windows Movie Maker was, but this looks like, I mean, it honestly looks pretty powerful. So if you are a Windows user, definitely check that out. Update to Windows 11 and check that out, because I think you could probably do most of what you want to do with video editing software with that if you don't want to spend the money. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I haven't seen anything about it yet, other than it just popped up and I was like, what is this? But again, if I were starting out, I would be all over that. I'd learn everything there is to know about that because it's free. It's on my computer already, and I can start playing around. Other than that, I do have some like post-production stuff, like Izotope for mixing and mastering. There's some good stuff there. It all costs money.
It does. Yeah. Let me ask you, since we were maybe hinting that we would talk about this earlier, there's a handful of like little audio kind of like utility apps, I guess I would categorize them on, that they're in their Mac only. So I want to tell you what a couple of my favorites do, and then I want to know, is there a Windows version I can recommend to someone?
Okay, great.
This always happens. Okay.
Let's see.
Loopback is, and by the way, anyone, like a couple of these ones I'm going to mention are all made by Rogue Amoeba, and because I'm a real self-referential kind of guy, I'm just going to tell everyone, go listen back to the episode of the show from last December where the CEO of Rogue Amoeba came on, and we talked about all these apps, and it was cool. It was just cool to talk to a software developer, and like they were kind of like floored, because a lot of these apps became like, they started selling a lot around the time that everyone was doing things online. So Loopback, I would say, is the one that the most music educators I know sucked up the $100 for and bought. And it is basically, you create, so like if you're in the audio input and output settings of your computer, like you've got like your, if you have a laptop, for example, you got your microphone that's built in, but if you have a microphone also like an external one plugged in, that will show up as an option to select as the input for your computer's system. Well, what Loopback does is it lets you create an input device and an output device that combines lots of different hardware and software into your own sort of custom thing. So like one thing I was doing online when I was streaming a lot was I wanted like my microphone to be the thing that my students would hear, but I also wanted a huge handful of music related apps and my web browser to also have the audio shared directly into the Google Meet call. So like Loopback, I created a little audio unit called like interface plus apps, and it was my audio interface, and then like Chrome, Fourscore, Logic Pro, insert, whatever, anything ever that I would want them to hear the audio from. And then that was just a selectable input from within a Zoom or a Google Meet call.
Yeah. I feel like, so first of all, there's a way to do it with your like OBS kind of thing, where you basically set your camera and audio source to OBS, which is like this, streaming software. And then you set it all up in there. And so you're actually, on the Zoom call, but it's your like streaming source, and you can add all your audio sources that way. It doesn't work for a digital audio workstation. Those are really angry when you try to stream audio, like really angry. I've seen many computers crash, Macs and PCs. So in order to do that, there are two that I know of for PC. One's called Virtual Audio Cable, VAC.
Okay.
It sounds like it's exactly what you're describing. And the other one's called Audio Jack. But
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, so it's the same stuff. They're a little like I guess clunky is the way I'd describe it. Like you gotta like play around with it, see how it works, and it's not super pretty to look at. But those are the ones that literally like, it gives you basically like a mixing board, a virtual mixing board, and you can create your own outputs with ASIO for all, number 4, ASIO for all. If you download that, along with these things, it gives you the options to select your input and your output sources and make a little mix for you. I do it all in Ableton now. I just route everything through Ableton. And when I'm streaming, I get even a little bit crazier with it. If we're talking about what I do just to make sure everything happens the way I need it to, I actually have a computer that when I'm doing something like this, I will have that computer, all it's doing with an interface, with everything, this computer, all it's doing is streaming. And so I have all of my audio sources, I have whatever I'm doing going out of that, maybe into this computer, going out of this computer into that other one that's streaming. So all of the audio sources can be actually mixed with an actual physical mixing board, and then just plugged into like this stereo channel for that interface, that streaming service. And so
that's pretty rad. So you have a second PC for streaming.
I do. It's only like when I'm doing it often, or I'm doing like a big live stream event or a ticketed thing. But having that other PC, it's just like all this thing is doing is streaming, and the only audio sources are this left and right channel. There's nothing, no virtual thing happening. It's like very, very simple. So as long as the mixing board is right, and having that big physical is really, really helpful, because you can actually like see where the audio is coming in and see what's going wrong. Like there's something about the analog audio where just having that little like light that shows if there's audio signal coming in or not. It's like very fast troubleshooting. Like there's no audio coming into this channel, so clearly it's not working. So that kind of stuff is really helpful. But to give you those PC versions, VAC, Virtual Audio Cable, I think it's called, and then Audio Jack are the two, and they work with Ableton. Those are the two that I've actually managed to get my DAW to stream audio on the same machine, but it takes some tinkering, let me tell you. And I believe there's also some like pretty gnarly delay, so you have to like sync it back up after. It's not fun to stream audio from a DAW.
I actually did. I have all of my digital audio workstations just routing through my like primary loopback thing, and it does get angry at me sometimes. Like I don't think Logic really it works better the other way around. Like it's cool. Like if I had a podcast, if I wanted to use like, I don't know, like have a soundboard or something for effects, I could like easily take my soundboard app, also made by Rogue Amoeba, it's called Farrago, and I could just like, that I tap the little button and that can go straight through my same audio channel that I'm talking into. But the other way around, for some reason, gets a little upset. I had to teach like a course, and I had my whole like Ableton sessions pre-planned and everything. I would just play this little bit of audio and ask them questions about it, and they're just like, we don't hear audio. It's like, oh right. Cool. And I kind of had to tell them like,
this isn't going to happen. They're like, oh, did you click this box? I'm like, guys, this is not like, this is like me on forums for an hour kind of problem. This isn't I just have to click a box that says share computer audio problem. Like, it's not happening today.
Yeah. That's cool. All right, that's and super helpful because I'm gonna like put all those in. I'll link them all in the show notes if anyone wants to go download them. I mean, Audio Hijack is pretty popular, and it has a lot of crossover with Loopback, but essentially, like I'm using it right now to record my side of this conversation because it's basically just like kind of a recording app, but you can it kind of lets you like wire audio ins and outs in a way, but I think it's a little bit more designed to capture. So I just have a really simple setup that goes interface as the input, and then stereo MP3 as the output, basically, and it kind of lets you route stuff like. And it's nice. One thing I do with it a lot is I record apps. If I for some reason need to record the output of an app, I can set up the app as the starting point. It has like a little draggy droppy kind of interface where you're like dragging little wires from one thing to the other. So like an app can be a little source of audio, and then you drag a little wire to I don't know, like you can route it to like the input of another app, or you can route it to just basically like an MP3 file, where it will save it to your hard drive, and it's kind of nice. I don't know, anything like that comes to mind?
I mean, the other two, it seems like they would do a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There's like audio there's one Tunes Kit audio capture, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. Which I've seen for like basically being like your capture card, especially for DSLR cameras if you're trying to get the audio in, and have it play nice with that. So that would probably do it. I'm trying to think what else I would do. A lot of it I do end up doing analog. I mean, I actually have right here my iPad plugged in analog with just an audio cable, and that goes into a mixer, which goes into the interface. And it's just like a lot of the time, if there's something like that I want to get in. So that was for a podcast that I was recording, and it was going to be over FaceTime, and I don't have an iPhone, so I can't do it on my computer, right? Any of that. So it's like, okay, so we'll have them come in on the iPad. I'll route that audio in so they don't have to record on their side, and I can also split up the audio sources, so my mic will be on a separate channel than them, and I can record both sources right in Ableton. A lot of the audio routing like that, I would recommend digging into like a digital audio workstation like that, because the routing, especially on something like Ableton, which it's called Ableton Live for a reason, is so you can have different ins and outs. You can have cues, so I can create a different mix for different headphones and different things. Like those are really powerful if you need to do some routing. It's all built in.
And one of the things I explained to someone who's familiar with Logic or Pro Tools but not Ableton is like it's also designed for sort of like actually like producing the music live with this whole like session view, which is sort of this non-linear grid of clips. Being that because so many of your compositions have layers or loops, do you find that writing or recording music into the session view like sort of non-linearly is a big selling point of Ableton for you? Or are you mostly just writing it that way and then tracking it sort of in the traditional, I forget what they call the traditional view where you just record from left to right. What do they call that? I forget.
Arrangement versus session view.
Thank you for that.
How about that?
Yeah.
No, I have in the past, like I have an Ableton Push MIDI controller, and I've definitely used it like that, sequencing and all of those really powerful things that it is clearly designed for. Yeah. But again, the reason I have it is just because somebody had a free trial, gave me a CD when I was in high school. So I was using it in ways that I could, but really it was just my recording software. So I'm mostly always in, I don't know which is which, but the linear view, just like other DAWs. And then I do the mixing in the other view, which is nice. I mean, it's a pretty good way to see it, but I'm almost always in that other view. When I'm producing something like a loop or something, it's usually already written. Like it's already already know what I'm trying to do with it. In the early loops, I did do it in Ableton using its looping software, which like its plugins, which were very clunky at the time. Now they're a lot better. And I've also figured out how to get rid of the latency, which was a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back then I was definitely using that other view and kind of treating it like a live show. I've also performed with the Ableton push and done it like that a couple times, but it's a little out of my depth. And the more I do it, the more I'm like, definitely DJs who are doing this already have a lot of this stuff pre-programmed in. Like, they're not like playing in live stuff and recording it. There are a couple people who I've seen do it truly live, and with that, I'm like, either you're like genius, or you knew pretty much what you were going to play, and you like just have practiced this as like a regular performance. Because it's really wild to see somebody just kind of, you can see on if you know what to look for with the push, you know if they have pre-programmed loops in. And so I've seen a couple people where it's like, you don't even have pre-programmed loops. You're literally just doing this to a click and coming up with everything. And it's like, okay, so that's really impressive. And it doesn't have to be, because nobody cares if you're coming up with this right now. But I know.
Yeah.
So other than that, like most people, like you just queuing samples really. And like, it's a fun collaborative kind of thing, and you can play around with it. But no, I don't typically do that. So is it a selling point? Absolutely. Is it a selling point for me? Not really.
Yeah. Interesting. You mentioned something a few minutes back, maybe a little more than a few minutes, about you're just talking about like microphones that are well suited to the trombone. Yeah, so a handful of people who are brass players who wrote into me wanted to kind of talk about like tone. I think this is like something I'm thinking about a lot lately, like just tone standards, like are in an ongoing dialogue of like, trying to combat the idea that some music is good and not just actually like your experience in life and preferences. You find that there's like so many different concepts of like what is tone. I think maybe it's fair to say like some people kind of categorized or like described your tone and your videos as like really controlled and clear, maybe bright. Like as you are doing these videos, do you feel like, I guess I'll tell you what a couple listeners asked, and then I'll tell you my add-on to this question. So a lot of people just asked, like, are you doing like a lot of post-processing, or do you feel like pretty secure in saying like that's just kind of the sound? Do those two things sort of interact with each other since you're so competent in the technology? And then I'll add even another layer and just ask, like, as someone who's just really steeped in popular music, do you feel like kind of the tonal standards of lots of heavy production is like sort of influencing younger generations of brass players and how they play?
Yeah, I'm going to start by answering a question you didn't ask. So I was just out in LA for a week and hanging out with a friend of mine who's a drummer, and I was showing him one of the Christmas tunes that I'm working on, and I programmed like some drum samples, and he's like, "This is good," and I was like, "Okay, so it's lame, clearly," and so I had him play on it. I mean, that's the end of this story. Like, he just sent me the drum tracks that I hired him to play on, and it's like so funky and groovy and so much better. But when we were talking about that, he was like, "Listen, we have heard programmed drums now so much on the radio that like it's a sound. It's not what you're going for," because what I was doing was like a Wolfpack like funk thing. He's like, they don't use those. They use a live drummer. So that's why it doesn't work. But he's like, it doesn't necessarily not work, because if it's like this specific kind of hip hop thing or this specific kind of pop thing and the sound is right, like that's a sound that we know and our ears are used to now. So it sounds good. And so that's, I say that to kind of echo what you're saying. Like, if this kind of very, very produced sound and processed sound is what the future generation is hearing all the time, then that's just the sound, or a sound. And it's really just a matter of making it fit the genre, I guess, or whatever, like I don't think that sound would make sense in certain settings. And so just like my programmed drums did not make sense in that setting. So I think like, yes, absolutely. Like kids are going to listen to that and know that that's available to them. But also, I don't think they will like try to put that in like a jazz band setting or something necessarily. Although you get a couple bands that are doing something with these like recording projects that are a little bit like that. But so my tone is definitely bright. It's kind of this echo chamber of my own thoughts and ideas of what I want to sound like. That's what happens when you make videos by yourself for 10 years.
Yeah.
It starts out with like, oh, what do I kind of want this to sound like? And then like, yeah, that sounds good. Do more of that. Yeah, that sounds good. Do more of that. Yeah, and then like all of a sudden I've literally designed a trombone to be as bright as a trombone can play. And I've bought a microphone to pick up those bright sounds. And I have these post-processing like things that make it bright. So yes, it's very bright because that's what I like. But at the beginning, the post-processing was more because the microphone was not good enough to have those like shimmery tones to them that I like. Now that I have this microphone, I have to do much less with it. I'm also much better at playing, so I have to do much less with it. So I feel like they've kind of flipped. It started out with like a lot of post-processing to get it to sound what I wanted it to sound like, and the playing was whatever. And now it's kind of flipped where the playing is pretty close to what I want it to be and sounds exactly what I'm going for or close to it, and the post-processing can be just kind of just a little icing on the cake. It's possible that the end product is the same regardless. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like, does it really matter? If what the art that I'm trying to create is coming across, I'm happy. Like, if it feels authentic and cool, then I'm happy. But yeah, so for tone, my concept is very, very, very bright, kind of James Brown inspired, kind of Fred Wesley is the trombone player for James Brown, but he has his own stuff that speaks to me. That kind of vibe. But the supporting role is like a lower instrument that can't be so bright. So if it's a counter melody, I might play it on a big horn and have it be this dark, more orchestral sound. So I definitely play around with that, and I love doing it. I mean, I went to school for it, and when I finally get to play a concerto once in a while, it's like, oh yeah, like I'm really good at this. It's almost like I studied it. So it's funny because that horn itself doesn't do the dark thing very well, but I do because, again, I went to school for it. So it's fun. It's very, very fun to play into that once in a while. The one that pops to mind for some reason is the Addams Family, I guess, because we just did all the Halloween stuff. I did like a funk version of the Addams Family. And when I played the melody at one point, I was just like, for some reason, got really, really into it, got really close to the mic and did this like super warm version of it that was a little bit more like, I don't know, J.J. Johnson or these kind of like, you know, more warm Irby Green players. So anyway, lots of stuff that maybe didn't answer your question, but I definitely think about it a little bit, but it's the echo chamber that has put me down this path where I play on the tiniest trombone with no copper in the middle on a very bright post-processing.
I think that itself is an interesting thing to think about, though, because like you are sort of, you know, like, and I know that you like go out and you play with other musicians. Like there's lots of clear collaboration happening sometimes in person, but also like, you know, like you said, like on some online in some virtual collaboration as well. And you know, you're traveling, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about yourself as sort of in a way like being your own influence and sort of just like following where it leads you.
It's an interesting like experiment. I'll say that much because I don't think it's been done before, where you don't have too much outside influence. And it's cool because at the beginning of the process, I have an idea for what I want something to be. And yes, of course, it will adapt a little bit over the course of the project. But in general, by the time I finish it, it's what I wanted it to be, right? I keep working at it until it is. But on, let's say, my album, or when I was out in Phoenix, like I was talking about, working on the next one, I'm with two other collaborators, and what I started with is nothing like what I ended. And I like it better, in fact, than what my original idea was. That's what collaboration is. So it's this kind of fight between a collaboration and having some really good ideas spur. Like, also, you got to remember, like, what I ended with is nothing like what my collaborator would have done either. You know, it's different than what either of us would have done. And that's what's so cool about it. But the alternative, what I've been doing over here, is like the truest version of what I wanted, what I set out to do. Like what you see is my idea. Like, that's what it was. That's, you actually get to see what my idea was completely fleshed out. And that doesn't usually happen. I guess maybe with visual artists, sometimes they can, like, you know, hold themselves up in a studio and come out with something that's like, this is what was inside my soul, you know?
Yeah.
But musicians don't get to do that because all we're doing is listening to each other all the time. And also I have so much control over the process, from the arrangement to the production to everything. It's just like, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted it to look like and sound like. So it's a weird little experiment for sure. But
it's interesting.
Yeah, nothing beats collaboration.
For sure. I sometimes collaborate even with the software, and something that reminds me I'm not a producer. However competent I get with the digital stuff, I'm always reminded, like, if I'm like making a song or just like kind of playing around with the sample library in Logic Pro or Ableton Live or something, it's like, you know, it's like, okay, here's like a drum groove I've found, and it's like, all right, I know exactly which synth I want. I hear it, but I don't know which of the 1,000 plugins I have installed on my computer is that one. I'm pretty sure I have it. Whereas like with a marimba, it's like, I know exactly, like if I want a certain sound, I know exactly which mallet to go grab out of my bag and exactly how to strike it and where on the key, you know. So sometimes, like, the limitations of my sort of like lack thereof of like honed in craft on the technical stuff, it influences me. It's like, oh, I'm going to take this project in this direction now, which was not what I heard in my head, but I don't know. Is that part of it too, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, less now than at the beginning, because now even the software I'm proficient with. Yeah. Like, you are grabbing your mallets. I know what plugins I'm going to go grab. I don't even look at the other ones. So definitely less now, and it's a little bit more of in my wheelhouse, or I guess a lot in my wheelhouse. But when I'm working on something new, I mean, there's a track off of my last album that is literally just what you're talking about, me like going around and finding different sounds and just putting them in and seeing what I can come up with and programming it in and like just moving it around and just seeing what those sounds sound like. That's how that like whole track came about. And so without the software, like that doesn't happen. Like none of those ideas come about or happen. So definitely sometimes when I leave myself open to it, those fun things happen, and you can kind of just play around with what the software is offering, which is a lot usually. Like with something like Ableton, there's so much.
Oh, it's unreal. Yeah. Well, let me I guess I have did this document make it your way with like the segmented things?
I'm gonna go with yes.
I didn't know if you're like a person who is more comfortable with having things in front of you or not. I sometimes do segments. Well, I always do segments, but I had one of all the questions here. I thought there was one more that I kind of thought was interesting. I couldn't figure out a natural place to fit it, but it was something that someone asked me, and like it's sort of like I guess like a workflow question for you. You know, like with all of your video editing skill, I've found that people who are like all the people who are musicians who are really savvy with computers at some point brush shoulders with some kind of software that's going to make pretty things, like Poster, a concert program, you know, like maybe you're like good in a publishing application or like just, you know, Microsoft Word, whatever that might be. And, you know, you can use pretty things to communicate ideas. But one of the things that I feel like there's room for in someone's life once they're proficient in an app that can make this stuff is like not so much full on like video producing, but like making pretty things that move. And so one of the listeners of the show basically wrote in and he said like, okay, I want to do a video explainer on the circle of fourths from my band students, and I'm trying to do a basic animation, basically just like manipulating some simple elements. I just feel like what I want to convey to them visually would be so much more clear if I knew how to get some otherwise static images to move around. Do you feel like video editing is the solution to this problem? If so, like, are there any tricks or tips you can offer? Do you feel like you do a lot of this?
Yeah, with my educational stuff, I'm doing more and more of that because yeah, you're right. Like you have this idea where it's like I want this little circle to just spin around or just do this thing. It's like this very simple motion, and in order to do that, you have to basically like take a year of video editing courses,
Right,
just to get
right.
off the ground to now know how to import that thing and how to keyframe it to move. That's it. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean, a year is severe. In order to have your video, or even if it's just an animation, like assuming you already have the assets, you already have the drawing of the circle of fourths or whatever, and you just want to now animate it, you can totally do that in Premiere without too much effort. You just have to learn how to keyframe it, and then it's just like, okay, you have a scale, which is how big it is, and you have a motion where it is on the screen, and you have a rotation, and you're animating now. And then you can get into like those keyframes of how do they move? Is it from point A to point B linearly, or does it like ease in and ease out of those, or something called a Bezier, where it takes like a circular motion. Those are, and that's it. Like that's the whole thing. That's the whole first year of animation. So I think the answer is like, yeah, I think you do have to go the video editing route. But I don't know that for a fact. Again, I'm only knowing from my point of view, which is like this. Certainly, when I started, that was the only way to do it. But like Adobe Premiere Rush is an app you can get on your phone. It's very possible you could do it on your phone now with just that, and it's like super user friendly. I don't know. I wouldn't know, because why would I? Why would I try these things if I already know how to do it the way I do it? So it's very, very, very possible there's a super user friendly way to do it, but I don't know what it is if it's out there. So I hope there's a user friendly way to animate stuff. But the way I would do it is like I said, just getting into any kind of video editing software. Maybe it's the I keep forgetting the name of it. The Davinci Resolve.
Yeah, Davinci Resolve. Mm-hmm.
Since it's free, and learning how to keyframe on it and go from there. The stuff that gets really annoying about that, I think, is like the export and or like the, how you set up the session, like those things that are just really like not obvious, and you don't get off the ground super fast because you have to like set up the session and understand like what it's going to be exported as. Is it 1080p? Is it HD? Is it 30 frames per second or 2997? Like those kind of like weird little questions that you're like, I just need to import this image and make it spin. And so those are the things where you got to just rely on those YouTube tutorials and be like, okay, how do I set up my session in this software? How do I do this? How do I keyframe? And the hardest part is just knowing what to ask. Because if you didn't know what a keyframe was, and maybe you still don't, because I haven't really explained it, then like, how would you know to ask that question? And so for this person specifically, I would say, yeah, start YouTubing like how to set up the session, or your sequence, it's called, how to set up your sequence, how to import footage, how to keyframe motion, and then maybe how to Bezier motion, how to Bezier keyframes, and then how to export. So
Yeah.
that'll get you there in a day or two, even on somebody who isn't comfortable with the software. That'll probably get you there.
That's super helpful. Yeah, you said something again that's just reminded me again of like that obsessive quality. I remember, you said knowing how to ask the right question, and you earlier even said like Google, Google when necessary. I remember
Yes.
like one of my college roommates, like literally watching him over the course of like 2 weeks, not leave his room, but learn all of Logic Pro and become a producer just from locking himself in his room. I was like, by the end of the second week, I was like, how are you doing all of these things that you didn't know how to do 2 weeks ago? And, again, it's just that question. He showed me, he's like, well, when I didn't know how to do this, and then he opens Google and he just types in, but, he's just specific enough that he knows where where point B is. And yeah, that can get you places.
There's my freshman year of college, I had this idea for an intro sequence for my Christmas series where the words were like flying around the screen and it was snowing and I was physically sitting on like one of the words as the camera flew by. I didn't know how to do any of that. And I started looking up tutorials. I found After Effects is how to do 3D motion. I had never even opened the software. So over the course of 3 days, I did 48 hours of tutorials by a guy by the name of Andrew Kramer, who had these free tutorials online, Video Copilot it's called. And I learned how to do it. And I came up with that effect and I finished it. And I'm like, there. And I learned all those skills just by looking up those tutorials and graphics and all of that. How to do like create a particle world to create snow, like all of these things. But just like all the other things I've said today, like the reason I did it and had the drive to do that is because I had a clear idea of what I wanted to accomplish with it. I knew what I wanted it to look like at the end. So I knew like, okay, how do I get closer and closer and closer to that idea? And it gives you a lot more drive to learn stuff if you have a clear idea of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let me bring this home here. There are sometimes there are 3 segmented things that often I try to do, and that's because sometimes this show skews more pedagogical, sometimes more performance, sometimes more technological. I like to just have whoever the guest is, pick their brain on music and some technology, some tools that they're using. So I don't know, okay. I don't know if you've had any time to prepare this. Certainly, I think maybe, can you like think of an app and a tech recommendation of the week if I start each category first?
Oh, I'm sure I could come up with something.
Cool. Well, let's do music. I'll do my pick of the week, and then that'll give you some time to
Okay.
think it over. So, are you Bela Fleck fan at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's great. He's just like put so much music out into the world that you combine that with all the music that is out there. Sometimes it's overwhelming. So like sometimes it's easy, like when an artist you like has a new release, even if you really, really love that artist, sometimes even what they're putting out into the world can get sometimes a little bit lost in your view. But not this latest album. This album, My Bluegrass Heart, that just came out, is like a collaborative bluegrass album. It's exactly what I've come to love the most of what he is doing with bluegrass, which is like progressive compositions that pull in other like-minded musicians who are sort of coming from classical and bluegrass and jazz and sort of combining these things. But at its core, it's definitely it's got the things that you know, if you're a bluegrass fan, you would love, or if not, and I don't know, all of the arrangements are great. The one with Chris Thiele on it is the one that I really, really like. And hold on, that's I'm gonna find the actual name of it on the track. I should probably just Google search the track listing. It's Psalm and then a number. I don't remember. There's lots of Psalms, so I don't remember which Psalm the composition is about. Psalm 136, and I'll link a YouTube thing because I think, I'm not sure if every track, but a lot of them at least are video recorded as well at the Telluride Bluegrass Festival, so you can watch these. Cool. And I saw it on YouTube, and I was just like floored. It's great when an artist that you follow as closely as I really like what he does, and even what Chris Thiele does. It's just great to every now and then just be like totally floored by something that they're doing, even though you've just consumed so much of their music. So it's cool.
All right, so it's my turn, huh?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be an album. It can be live music, a playlist, whatever.
So there's so much. The one that comes to mind first, I'm gonna give you a couple. Is it okay if I give a couple?
It's great.
Okay. So I will turn my camera back on. The first one is "Don't Lose Sight" by Lawrence. It's this band that they're kind of popping off now, but the first time I heard them a few years ago, it was just like, oh, so this is for me. It's just funky and great, and the vocals are full of flavor, and it's just so good. So the song's called "Don't Lose Sight," and they did like an acoustic version as well on YouTube, maybe like a week, probably a couple weeks ago now. But both are just like so good, so good. And then doing this course that I've been working on the past day, I've been listening to a ton of instrumental stuff within pop music, and so there's a couple that I'd love to point people to. The first one being probably the craziest horn line that's ever been written, which is Roller Coaster by Dirty Loops. The horn line written by Jerry Hay.
Wait, hold on. Yeah, I'm hearing the chorus in my head. I'm trying to think of the lick though.
It goes ba 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 da ba ba da ba ba.
Oh, that one. Okay. Have you heard their new album with collaboration with Corey Wong?
Yeah. They just came out with a couple videos from that.
There's a couple tasty licks in there. Anyway, proceed.
They're wild. So that's probably the craziest brass. And then I came upon this one. It's How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful by Florence and the Machine, and the arrangement is like a brass ensemble, like a full classical brass ensemble, not like a brass band, not like a marching band thing, like a true like Western wind ensemble, but like brass, and just brass and like totally orchestral, and it's just wildly gorgeous. So those are the three. If you're looking for something fun to listen to, Lawrence. If you're looking for something crazy like face melting, then Dirty Loops. And then if you just want to be wowed by somebody who you would not expect to have this kind of influence, Florence and the Machine.
Righteous. All right, I'll kick off an app of the week. So as you know,
app of the week. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh boy. Yeah. It can be. Well, I'll give. So I was. We talking about talking about fiddly automation. So one of my favorite fiddly automation apps is called Keyboard Maestro, and I'm sorry, it's a Mac thing, but I'm going for it here. You'll appreciate this though.
I know Keyboard Maestro. Yes, I wish it was on PC. It's amazing.
It's cool. So what I would actually, I talk a lot about the Shortcuts app on the show. Actually, Shortcuts is not that like spiritually different than Keyboard Maestro in that they are both sort of, it's kind of like a drag and drop interface for making little, sequences of things you want your computer to do for you. And what I, like about it is that things that take multiple clicks and taps can all be just one click or tap, or you can have many, many different things on your computer trigger a Keyboard Maestro. They call them macros. You can have multiple things trigger them. A lot of mine are just assigned to keyboard shortcuts, but plugging in a certain audio interface or connecting to a certain Wi-Fi network or bringing your computer within a certain location can trigger these. And I've got a handful of really, really nice ones. I put a blog post. I'll link this blog post, but I have one that takes filling out instrument rental forms for band students and just makes it a little bit easier to do with a lot less tabbing around the document. Like it just basically puts up a prompt on the screen. You type in the information all at once and then hit enter. And then it does all the tabbing and the copying and the pasting of that data into the right form fields of the PDF and then duplicates the file, saves it, and names it after the kid. And like little bits like that are really nice. It now works in combination with Shortcuts, which Shortcuts came to the Mac in the recent Mac update. So I can do this thing. I've got a rehearsal shortcut where I like go into a mode. There's this like new thing where you can design your own do not disturb modes. So I have a rehearsal mode called a do not disturb mode called rehearsal, where basically when I start band class, I go to do not disturb, but I choose rehearsal, and then only notifications from my music team come through to my devices. And then I've created an automation and Shortcuts that when I go into that mode, my iPad opens up the score on the left side and a seating chart on the right. My Mac or my iPhone opens up the Tonal Energy Tuner app and starts playing a concert band playlist while the kids come in. And I couldn't get the Mac version to cooperate, so I used Keyboard Maestro to create a macro that opens up my presentation that shows the agenda on the screen and turns off a bunch of apps that I don't need my students to see. And I was able to get that Keyboard Maestro macro to run inside of the shortcut. So it's just a lot of like, it's not unlike audio, like stringing together lots of different digital wires until they do your bidding, but only for productivity.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's the PC version is called AutoHotkey. It doesn't do everything, but it's pretty good. Yeah, Yeah, I'm very jealous of Maestro because a friend of mine has shown me his house and how it's all set up and he can initiate things. In a similar vein, I'm going to have mine is called Flick. My recommendation, FLIC. It's the company that makes I've already talked about it twice. One of the infrared transmitters, as well as these buttons that I have all throughout my house that you can program to do whatever you want. But the reason I have them, here, hold on, I gotta unplug my headphones. This is a visual cue, so sorry, podcast people. I'll explain it really well though. I hope you can still hear me.
I can.
Okay. Where are they? Are they over here? No. Cut this out. It's fine. I'm tall, but I'm not tall enough.
I wonder if I should narrate this. Okay, so he's like moved to the back of the room and is reaching.
There we go.
Okay. Okay.
I'm plugging my headphones back in. Here we go. All right. So this is what it looks like. It's a little circular button that has a sticky back. You can stick it wherever you want and click it and have whatever you want it to do. That's what it's for. But one of the things you can sync it up with is Fourscore, which is a sheet music reading app. And you can have it turn your pages for your sheet music. So it's a little button. There's foot controllers that you can find to turn your pages on your iPad. But a friend of mine 3D printed this little doohickey that I can stick it to, and it clips to my trombone. I guess it's the inside.
Does he sell those? Because people, I think, will want that.
He does sell these.
Nice.
This one's custom because my trombone is also custom. But he has them for like the common trombones. Okay, let's just throw it here. So I'm showing him that it is now attached to my trombone. I can put the flick there, and now if it were sticky enough, I think I usually actually just put it down here, but basically wherever my hand is that I want it, I can attach it. Oh, there we go. So that's where I usually have it. So it's, if it was sticky enough, it'd be right there. So it's where my hand already is. I can click the button to turn the page without moving my hand at all. While I'm playing, I can move around. It's Bluetooth, so I can walk around and not be attached to anything, and I can turn the pages from afar. I can also have my iPad like sharing the screen up to a bigger screen or a projector or something, and I can turn the pages on a projector without being anywhere near it, without holding any other device or anything. So the Flick Grip, it's called, FLIC-GRIP, if you want to find the 3D printed grips, and then you need to buy the whole, actual.
I'm already thinking about all the other kinds of things it could trigger other than just page turning.
Well, like I said, double click this one, it turns off my lights.
Nice. Wow. Okay.
So those are the Flick things, and they work with, if this then that, with all the smart home stuff. They're adding new things that you can sync them up with, and it's great. I mean, I have one next to my bed that so it initiates the like nighttime sequence, and they have all the delay stuff built in. That's when I was saying I leave my house, I click one under my desk on my way out. It initiates everything. So it's funny because I got to a certain point with the home automation stuff where I had everything that I was doing with just my voice, and then I was like, I don't want to open my mouth. I just want to be able to click a button that does it. And it's almost like taking it backwards. And of course I could do it with my phone. I could open up an app and click a button, but having a physical button to do the things that I do most often has been really, really nice. And that's something that I feel like everyone can learn from, which is just, if you do something many, many times, find a way to make it more efficient. With my video editing, a lot of times there's 4 of me on screen, right? For years, I would edit that every single time. So I'd put one up here, one up there, one down there, one down there. I'd put a little border on. I'd size them, make sure everything looks good. And eventually I was like, I'm just going to make a template, and all I have to do is sub out those videos, drop them in, and now it looks exactly like it always looks, but I was putting so much effort in it. So it's like, if you do something, I mean, for people like us, it would be like, if you do something twice, then automate it.
Yes.
For most people, if you do something like 50 times, make sure you automate it. But yeah. So yeah, that's my little recommendation. The flick grip and the flick. I don't know what they're called. I think it's just flick.
I gotta get those. You changed my tech tip. Okay, I'm gonna change it to be complimentary to that one. Because my version of that, and I love the idea of having clicky buttons, but what I do have is NFC stickers all over the house. Because a shortcut or a home automation on an iPhone can be triggered by an NFC sticker, which is basically just a little sticker with a little sensor inside of it, and you can basically, like, if you've created one of these automations, let's say that like my rehearsal automation, actually this is a great idea. I just had an idea. I could easily, because right now I'm turning on this rehearsal automation with a by going up to the menu bar of my Mac and turning it on. But like what I could do is I could put my phone in rehearsal focus mode by basically setting up this sticker as a trigger, and then when you swipe it with your phone, it does stuff. So I've got them everywhere. Like I've got one right here that like turns on the heat in my studio and like dims the lights. I've got one that can like turn on a red light outside of, because I'm in my basement, so it can tell my wife I'm recording. Like open a bunch of apps on my computer that I need for podcasting, close ones I don't. I got one that in the living room under the coffee table. I swipe that, it dims the lights, turns on the TV, sets the HDMI input to 1, and like opens up the TV app. So just like similar, but
very similar. Cool.
Swiping your phone on stuff, but I like button clicking though. I like that.
It's very satisfying to click a clicky.
So I would almost need like a dead one just to fit as a fidget, so that I didn't.
Yeah, I mean the one I had right here isn't set up for anything yet. So you hear it?
I hear it. Sounds great.
Oh, so satisfying.
Let's stay in the edit.
Yeah. So I was in. I guess this will be my tech. I was in LA and at like a bougie. It was great. If somebody's listening from there, it was great. I loved it. It was it was at Paris Hilton's old house, in Beverly Hills, and it was like all of these creators and tech folks creating products for creators. So anyway, not my scene necessarily. The creators was great. It was just like they're spending all this money for me to be there so they could sell stuff to me. It was just very obvious. But at a certain point, one of the CEOs of one of the companies was talking to a few people, and I went over, like, said hi. I was kind of like, okay, I'm kind of over this. But I remembered that I had this business card, which I got because I'm a low waste, zero waste kind of person, and business cards feel like unnecessary. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll just get one really nice one, and then I have people take a picture of it on their phone, and then I don't have to buy more business cards. They don't have to throw it out the second I leave. But I found this, which is a business card that has that technology built into it, and you just swipe it on the phone and it pulls up your account with your business card, just with what is it called? RFD? What is it? You just said it.
It's an NFC tag in there.
NFC. Yeah, it has an NFC tag. And so you just swipe it on the back of somebody's phone. Their information comes up, your information comes up, and then they can also add their information and send it to you through that site, and I get a little notification. So we don't have to exchange information. I could just swipe my card, and then like if they want to put in their information, I can get theirs. So that's been really cool. And when I was at this event, I was like, I bought this over the quarantine. This was the first time I was like, oh, I forgot to bring business cards. I was like, oh wait, I have my business card. I forgot I bought this thing. And so I went and I was like, oh yeah, this is how this works. And they all kind of like perked up, and the CEO of this company that was like very cold to everyone was like, let me see that thing. And so I'm like, well, if you want to see it, you got to like see if it works. And so like he swiped it, and so now he has my information. It's kind of funny. Like this person that everyone was trying to get into, I come in with this like weird little technology, and like, so now we follow each other on Instagram. It feels good, but I also feel like he's more interested in the technology that I bought than me, which like fine, but so So that's mine. It's called the OVOU card, and it's the last business card you'll ever need.
Oh. And it very well might be.
It's really nice as long as that technology stays compatible with phones. It is actually really nice to not never worry about leaving without business cards. Oh, and the other thing is I can change my information on there. So if I go to a function with people that I don't want them all to have my phone number or my email address, I can change it to my manager's phone number and email address and share all my information to as many people as I want, and then switch it when I'm done, and I can now share that with personal contacts. So kind of neat.
That's awesome. All right, I learned a lot today. I've got tons of links that I'm going to dump in the notes. Yeah. Thank you so much again for coming on. It's so fun to chat. Oh, one more thing. Any places that I'll link all of the obvious places where people can find all of your awesome work. Are there any things, any places other than your website, your YouTube channel, social media accounts, any places or even any projects that you want to promote that people should check out?
The YouTube channel is where you're going to see all the important stuff. If you go to my website and sign up for the mailing list, you'll know the other cool things that I'm working on. Sheet music is being published very rapidly now. So old sheet music that people have been requesting for years is finally getting published, which is cool. That'll be on the newsletter and the website, which is classicaltrombone.com. And this course that I'm super excited about, if you are interested in learning arranging from me, somebody who has done it more than pretty much anybody, then that'll be out. Probably very soon. I'm trying to get it out by the weekend because I'm a crazy person, but certainly by the holidays. So, that'll be all over the website for sure. Instagram and TikTok at Classical Trombone.
Nice. All right, I'm Robby Burns. Thanks for listening to Music Ed Tech Talk. You can find the show's page, show notes for this episode, and my blog at musicedtechtalk.com. You can subscribe to blog posts through an RSS app of your choice, and you can subscribe to the podcast in a podcast app of your choice. You can now get blog posts delivered right into your email inbox once a week. Please rate and review the show in the podcast app you use. It absolutely helps. It'll only take a second and a few taps. Word of mouth is helpful too, so please spread the word about the show. You can learn more about my teaching and music career at robbyburns.com. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube at Robby Burns. Please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/musicedtechtalk. All support tiers get perks, but even the base tier gets you a monthly video update with app and music recommendations and tech tips, and access to the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord community, where you can chat with other supporters and guests of the show about music, apps, pedagogy, lesson ideas, tech support, and more. It's a fun place to be. All right, and we'll see you next time.